pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, we thank you for our community and for our friends and neighbors and family. We pray that you guide us this evening as we do the people's business. In your name we pray. Amen.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. First order of business this evening is the approval of the agenda, including possible agenda additions. If I can have the floor computer, please. Thank you. Staff had one item for additional consideration, but staff would like the board to please consider removing this item, and staff will bring it back to the board at a future meeting in order to answer some questions that came up and possibly refine some of the language.
Without objection?
And did you want to make the other
Yes.
changes?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. We'd also like to change, in the briefs, the presentations, we would like to move number 1 and number 3 to after closed session, please. And we would also like to pull number 8, the consent agenda item, till after closed session. So we just won't vote on it. If you want to give it, that's fine, but I'll pull it then, please, and we'll do it after closed session.
Yes,
Vote.
sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Motion for Mr. Skinner. If there's no discussion, we can vote.
Seven yes, motion passes.
Next order of business is the reading of the consent agenda. If I can have the floor computer again, please. The consent agenda for this evening is the approval of the minutes from August 13th, 2019, the Board of Supervisors meeting. Item number 2 is the acceptance and appropriation of a grant award for FY 2020 for the Highway Safety Grant Program Selective Enforcement for speed violations. The total grant is $59,400. There's an in-kind service match of $29,700 that's going to be met through maintenance and fuel through the sheriff's vehicles, and an overtime fringe benefit of $4,825 that's going to be met through the sheriff's operational budget. Item number 3 is an acceptance of a grant award and budget amendment for FY 20 Highway Safety Grant Program Selective Enforcement for alcohol impaired driving. The total grant is $79,500. There's an in-kind service match of $39,750 that again will be met through fuel and maintenance of sheriff's vehicles, and an overtime fringe benefit of $7,237 that'll be met through the sheriff's operational budget. Item number 4 is the acceptance of Hospital Boulevard and Spotsylvania Parkway into the Virginia Secondary Street System and abandonment of a short portion of F696 Overview Drive, and this is in the Lee Hill District. Item number 5 is the appropriation and approval of a resolution and subaward agreement to the schools for fiscal year 18 BJA Stop Violence Threat Assessment and Technology Reporting Program Grant Award in the amount of $94,851, and the schools will have a local match of $31,617. Number 6 is the approval of the Americans with Disability Act ADA notice and grievance procedure. Item 7 is to approve the purchase order to Thysungrup Elevator Corporation for the Judicial Center elevator modernizations in the amount of $326,581. Item number 8 is to approve the budget adjustment and appropriation necessary for funding additional legal service costs for social services in the amount of $82,960. Item 9 is the approval to change the full-time equivalency, that's an FTE, for Information Systems IT Program Manager position. Item 10 is to approve the contract modification number 3 for renewal to Murray Washington Healthcare Physicians for medical services. Item 11 is to approve the contract modification number 4 to Austin Brokenbrown Associates LLP to provide professional engineering services for design of the improvements for the courthouse sidewalk project, phases 2 and 3. This will increase the contract to $94,260. Item 12 is to approve the purchase order to McClung Logan Equipment Company, Inc. for an L70H wheel loader for Chancellor Convenience Center in the amount of $193,452. Item 13 is to approve the purchase order contract with Stryker Sales Corp. For purchase of 8 FREM Life Packs for $270,889.80. Item 14 is to authorize a public hearing for amendments to Chapter 23, County Code. This is for community centers and places of worship. Item 15 is to authorize a public hearing for amendments to Chapter 21 of the County Code pertaining to farm animals, machinery, agricultural products, etc. Item 16 is to authorize a public hearing for amendments to Chapter 21 of the County Code for the definition of a dwelling. Item 17 is to approve the budget adjustment and appropriation between fiscal years to the School Capital Project Fund for the timing of payments for Cortland High School renovation and expansion in the amount of $572,400. Item 18 is a donation for S-Power for the S-Power Development Company, LLC. This is for fire and rescue ballistic vests in the amount of $50,000. Item 19 is a proclamation to recognize September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in Spotsylvania County. Item 20 is a proclamation for Spotsylvania Restaurant Week 2019, October 18th through the 27th. Item 21 is a special entertainment event permit. This is for the Wild Roots Music Festival. It's going to be held at the Wilderness Presidential Resort on September 21st. And item 22, again, is the item that we're asking the board to remove from the consent agenda for future consideration.
Number 8 has already been pulled. Do any members have any others that they wish to pull from the consent agenda? Let's open the public comment period on the consent agenda only. Is there anyone signed up?
No, sir.
Is there anyone who wishes to address the board about any item on the consent agenda only? Seeing none, we'll close the first public comment period.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ross?
do we need to remove 22? That'd be a question for Carl, or is it already removed?
No, I think that's what Ed had mentioned, that 22 has already been pulled and removed,
Okay.
so I think that's recognized.
Thank you.
There's no discussion, we can vote.
Seven yes, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I have both proclamations that I'd like to read before we move on. The first proclamation is a proclamation to recognize September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in Spotsylvania County. And it reads, whereas the month of September is designated as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and whereas cancer is the second leading cause of death in children and after accidents, and whereas childhood cancer rates are rising and more than 15,270 children will be diagnosed with cancer in 2019 in the United States, and about 1,190 children under the age of 15 may die from the disease in 2019. And whereas less than 5% of the federal government's local funding for cancer research, total funding, for cancer research is dedicated to childhood cancer each year. And whereas the National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month provides an opportunity to share experiences and information with the public and media to raise awareness of childhood cancer. And whereas National Cancer Awareness Month is a time for families to honor and remember their loved ones lost to cancer and to recognize the healthcare professionals who provide care. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors on this 10th day of September 2019, that it be and hereby does recognize September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month in Spotsylvania County and honors the children who have lost their fight with cancer or are fighting cancer, as well as their families and caregivers. The second proclamation is for Spotsylvania County Restaurant Week, October 18th through the 27th. whereas Spotsylvania County recognizes the important role that locally owned restaurants play in both the economy and quality of life, and whereas Spotsylvania County acknowledges that a vibrant and diverse restaurant scene is necessary for strong tourism, and whereas locally owned restaurants provide residents with entertainment and a sense of community, and whereas our economy depends on the entrepreneurship of restaurateurs that drive creativity and expand employment opportunities for citizens, and whereas Spotsylvania Restaurant Week encourages residents to support locally owned businesses, now therefore be it proclaimed that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors does hereby recognize the dates of October 18th to the 27th, 2019 as Spotsylvania Restaurant Week, and we call this observance to the attention of all our citizens.
And are we up to public comment period?
Yes, sir. That brings us to public comment. Amy?
There are no citizens signed up to speak.
Is there anyone who did not sign up who wishes to speak at this time? Those are all staff members. Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period.
Mr. Chair, that brings us to board reports.
Mr. Benton?
Well, I hate to, I guess, even mention this with I wanted to speak a little bit about schools and I guess my stance, and so there's clarification as far as how I feel about I guess the schools and the budgets over the years. I just want to make a couple comments, and I'll try to make it as brief as possible. I guess first and foremost, you know, I think it's kind of ridiculous for the schools to come before us each year with, you know, 8 million, 10 million, 12 million, and so on worth of deficit. You know, I'll say deficits, shortfalls, whatever they want to call it. Knowing good and well, there's no way we can. At least this board currently will put that much tax increase and burden on our citizens. You know, I've stressed to them over the years about incremental increases for them to try to get what they need for their class sizes and their teacher pay, but yet each year they come before us and we're blasted and say we hate children and everything else, and they get their money and leave. It's just frustrating that, you know, to me, and I've told this to just about every school board member. I wish my biggest concerns is class size right now and teacher pay. But there's no way we can continue to fund all these special projects and all these new ideas that they have to do. And I'll bring up the specialty schools, or I forget what the real name is for them, but they're already implementing it. They can't even give us a cost estimate. And again, it's going to be more money requested. Instead of doing all these things and branching out to all these different fingers of activity, I just wish we could get the teacher pay, the health care, the overcrowding in the classrooms straight, and then move on. And I also want to be very clear in my, it's not that I don't support these things and think it's good ideas. It's not that at all. I think they're great ideas. I hope they work, but I wish we could just pull the reins a little bit, handle some immediate problems, get those under control, and then move on and expand. I do think we have a great school system. We just need to maybe hold the reins a little bit on the spending, concentrate on our personnel, and some of these special projects that aren't a necessity at this time. And that's it for me.
Mr. Marshall?
No report.
Mr. Skinner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have one comment, and Greg, I just want to expand on what you said, and people have to understand why they gave us such a big number. You know, many years ago, during the recession, we didn't get a lot of money The county didn't have a lot of money, neither did the schools. So what happened when people retired, they never filled those billets over the years and everything. And, 12 years later or whatever, now, if you've been back almost 8 years ago, we level funding for the schools for a couple of years there and everything. So I know I wanted to know what it would take to bring the schools up to the level that we really need for the students. That's students per teacher and stuff of that nature, and the raises and everything. So I know I was one that asked for that big, was it going to take $12 million to catch them up? Well, the same thing is happening here in the county. I can tell you when planning was down in the Capital One buildings, and when people retired, we didn't fill them. And so now we're in the same position as the schools, where I go to the department heads, and we certainly need more people in this area. So I don't think they're trying to pull anything or anything of that. That request actually came, I'll take responsibility for that, because I really wanted to know what it was came up. They have never given us a full needs budget because, seriously, because the administrator that we've had there, the county administrator. I know some administrator gave them, this is it, and that's all you got to work with. So it's not that they're trying to pull anything on us. I don't think they're in a very similar position that the county is. We could use a lot more people in the department and planning department and everything else. So I don't look upon it as being, ridiculous. We asked for that question, and it was really to let the county know, the people, that, look, here's what happened many, many years ago, and we're trying to catch back up to it. And you're right, we probably can't give them $12 million a year. But the need is there, and we got to figure out how to give them some of that during the years. Same way as we got to figure out how to bring county departments up to where we can serve our citizens to the best. So, thank you.
Mr. Yakubowski?
Thank you. This evening, I have two things I need to bring up. Over the past month, it's been nice to only have one meeting in August and in July too. But during that, or since that meeting in August, I have heard from more constituents about two issues than I've heard my constituents have raised to me than in any previous time I can remember. Number one is the issue going on with the schools and the stolen money and the back and forth that is going on and all of that. And I'm not going to get too involved in it. I know it's an election year and people are positioning themselves. But for me, it's always about having accurate information out there, as accurate as you can have. Nobody is perfect, and obviously everybody makes mistakes. But if you value the communication that we've been able to build with the school board over the past 2 terms, for me at least, or term and a half, which I do, I think that going down this road is a very dangerous one. If you want to look back to the 2000s when we had Jerry Hill as the county or the school administrator, superintendent, and see exactly what a bad relationship looks like. You had the school superintendent suing the Board of Supervisors. I was deposed for the lawsuit. You had him stand up in front of us and call the entire board basically that we're lying about our budget numbers. So if we want to go back to that, that's completely up to others, because I refuse to have that type of relationship with the school board at all. They are elected officials on their own. They run and their constituents vote for them. I think Dr. Baker has been the most open and transparent superintendent that I have worked with. I've heard a lot about how answers are not given, but I will tell you at the work session, I've never seen him refuse to answer a question, nor has the school division refused to answer the questions that the board has sent. And if you want to see, go back and look at our budget time and look at the questions that are asked, and all of them that are answered. And there are an awful lot in there that delve down with very, very specific, and they're very good questions too, Because I've always said that we should not have any area off limits. Transparency is paramount. But just because you don't get the answer that you like doesn't mean that they're not being transparent. So that's number one. Number two, I've also heard, and it's been unanimous from my constituents, about the fact that we do not have a HR policy when it comes to county employees and board members. And this has nothing to do specifically with Mr. Marshall and his current position. What I am concerned with mainly is where does this lead if we have no guardrails whatsoever, no limits to any of this. I've talked to supervisors that I know in the Commonwealth, and I have not heard of anybody else that doesn't have some sort of policies at all. And my concern, it was brought up from a constituent of mine, is what if you have a department head or even one step below a department head run for a board position? It brings up issues that we are not prepared to deal with because we do not have anything in our policies to deal with those. I don't know what those would be, but I would like to ask staff to put together information just to find out, is this a common practice? If not, what is done? Because I do know that the school division does not allow school board members to also be employees of the county and where they represent. We have a school board member currently that had to quit and go to another jurisdiction. So I think it's important for us to get the information, and I would ask staff, without objection from the board, to put together just information, and then we can see where we can go from there. Thank you.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Ross.
So I've got a couple things. One, Doug Morgan, I think his last day is today or soon. He's with the 20th. So this is our last meeting, I think, before he departs. He has been just phenomenal to work with. I just can't give him the kudos. Sorry to lose him, but I know he's going to a better place up in Stafford County and career advancement. You know, this is an individual that I could email at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm going to get a response back. He was crazy. I used to say, you know, or on the weekends. And he really took care of us on Smart Scale. He did a lot of innovative stuff on mapping our projects. And he stepped out of the room, so he's not here. But I just have nothing but good things to say about him. And we're going to miss him, but I wish him the best. I know he's going to do well in his career. Second thing I have, oh, there he is. You missed it. You missed it. I would just thank you, Doug, very much for everything you've done for Spotsylvania County. Yep, you bet. I hear what Mr. Yakubowski is saying as far as what our board can do. And Chris, you're probably not aware of it. I have reached out to staff already. They've put together some documents, and we're working on that to hopefully come up and at least get that issue resolved with us before the calendar year is up. The one point you did mention that school board members can't be a teacher in Spotsylvania County Schools. School board members can't have a wife that's a teacher in Spotsylvania County Schools. School board members can't have a son or a daughter that is employed by Spotsylvania County Schools, and that's by state law. But what I will point out, and I saw an op-ed in the paper that was kind of critical of us not having an HR policy. The soonest, and they did recommend grandfathering. Mr. Marshall and I agree with that as well. But what they didn't say was that we currently have a school employee running for Board of Supervisors. And to me, I would consider that at a department head level. And that is allowed by state law, and I don't know if the school board can make a change to their policy, as I hope we will make a change to ours, because I see that as a huge conflict of interest as well, and something that I haven't seen addressed by the paper or really anybody at this point in time. Let's see here. I got one more thing to say. That is that at our last meeting, which was the only meeting in August, I think the chairman for the Mountain View Political Action Committee of Educators, which I think is associated with the Virginia Education Association. I'm not sure if it's the Spotsylvania Education Association as well, made some statements. And I'm not trying to put you down, sir, and I do appreciate everything you do in our school system. But he made some statements that every candidate has an opportunity to participate in their process of endorsing candidates. And he says that process includes sending a questionnaire to all the declared candidates, and that those candidates can interact back with the Mountain View Political Action Committee, which is associated with the Virginia Education Association, because I see it on the letterhead I'm looking at, in that questionnaire, and then they will schedule an interview, and that the interview teams are formed and consider everything from leadership to the capability to win, and they do set up that interview. However, I will say that Mr. Philip Scott is a school board candidate, and congratulations to him. They've just had their 4th daughter. But he received a letter on VEA, Virginia Education Association letterhead, that I'm going to read it point blank without putting his phone number or email address in here, that says, this went back to a candidate out chancellor. Thank you for your interest, dear candidate. Thank you for your interest in serving the community as a school board member. The Mountain View Political Action Committee of Educators, MVU PACE, is our body that makes recommendations and endorsements each election cycle. Per our bylaws, we can recommend friendly incumbents without a survey and interview. Due to this, we are unable to offer you an interview and recommendation/endorsement, as we are recommending endorsing your opponent as a friendly incumbent. If you have questions, please contact, and signed by the chairman of that committee. And I just wanted to be transparent tonight, because that seems to appear the opposite of what was declared at our last public presentation time. And that's all I have for board reports.
Just had one item. Last spring, we approved an apartment complex called Palmer's Creek, which is taking advantage of something called Hometown Heroes program, where the state provides a subsidy to lower income municipal, county, and state employees to help with their rent. And I just want to ask staff to encourage other apartment owners during normal business processes when they're applying for permits and so forth, just to let them know about this program, because it's really to their own benefit. If they have vacancies, the state is going to pick up part of the rent if they rent those vacancies out to municipal employees. So it's really to the apartment owner's benefit to take part in this program. And we only have one, that just Palmer's Creek, which isn't built yet, is the only one in Spotsylvania taking advantage of it so far. So I just want to ask staff to encourage others just in the normal course of business. And that's all I had for my board report.
Mr. Chair, the next item on the agenda is a report by VDOT. We have with us this evening Jonathan Rumbaugh, who's our new Fredericksburg Assistant Residency Administrator.
Good evening, Chairman and Board. As Ed said, I'm Jonathan Rumbaugh, the new Assistant Residency Engineer for the Fredericksburg Residency. Just a quick bio about myself so you all know a little bit about me and your new partner for VDOT. I'm a product of Spotsylvania County. I was born and raised here. I went to the schools here. I then went to VMI, received my civil engineering degree there. And then I worked for a contractor for a year, and then I got involved with the state back in 2015, worked in Williamsburg residency for a year, did a short stint with VDOT in central office with the General Assembly. Then I moved to Louisa residency, where I spent the last 3 years, and now I'm here, which is the job I've wanted since high school. So I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to work with you all. So I have a presentation that's a little bit outside of the normal quarterly update you all have. Ed and Doug asked me to put it together because they said there's always a revolving door here in Fredericksburg. I assure you, this is the job I've always wanted in VDOT, so I'll be here for a little while. But there's also been a change a little bit in the top of VDOT, the new commissioner. Ed, do you have the PowerPoint in front of them? Or?
I believe, Jonathan, it's loaded on the floor computer in front of you.
I had to pull it, just administrative, sorry.
Jonathan, I have a clicker here that'll advance the slides for you, or you're welcome to sit at the front desk. Can I have the floor computer, please? Thank you.
Okay, so a little bit about our residency, in particular with Spotsylvania County. We have 3 area headquarters that maintain Spotsylvania County's roads: Chancellor Area Headquarters, Massaponax, and Post Oak. In those area headquarters, we have about 11 operators in each area headquarters. Now, Spotsylvania County has roughly 1,727 lane miles in it. So if you do the math with 33 operators, that's about 52.3 lane miles per operator. I just kind of wanted to put that number out there to kind of make it more real to all of you to kind of see what they're dealing with. So what our area headquarters do, they are responsible for maintenance, snow, severe weather. We did a lot of hurricane prep last week. Thank goodness it went the other direction, didn't come towards Spotsylvania. We also do incident response and traffic control. So as far as maintenance, we like filling potholes, ditches, road pavement, those type of items, vegetation, site distance issues. And we also set up like our work order, our customer service center, where we can get that feedback from the customers, and I'll get more into that in a bit. Incidents, so if you have like an accident that's caught blocking up Route 1, our guys or our operators are available 24/7 to go respond to that, to redirect traffic. We also work heavily with Virginia State Police. So severe snow and weather, like I said last week, we were heavily getting our guys ready just in case the storm turned west, so that we'd be prepared for any trees in the road or flooding or any types of those matters. As well as snow. Snow is a year-long thing that we prepare for. Right now, we're signing up all our contractors to help us push snow. We routinely do maintenance on our snow plows and items like that. So back to the customer reports. This might be a little hard to read, but so currently the way VDOT operates right now is off of work order system, where we get the citizens calling in, or the board, or Ed or Doug, with an issue, and we log it in. It goes through our customer service center, and they assign it to an area headquarters. Now, the area headquarters, I'm sure some of you have used the site, but on the site it says it will be assigned in 3 days, 72 hours. So after that 72 hours, our operators have 10 business days to go look at that work order and provide their recommendations. Try to fit it in their schedule and those items. So they get pinged with an email, and then we fit it into our work schedule. And then that's what the internet site, you can do it online, you can do it on phone, or you can call our office, and we can do it that way too. The phone one is available 24/7 as well as the online one. So just kind of a breakdown of what we're looking at with Spotsylvania County. From January to August 31st, when we pulled this data, Spotsylvania County received roughly 2,683 work orders. The vast majority of those were potholes, and then after that was drainage, culvert pipes, vegetation, and dead trees. So with those work orders, we have a breakdown of how many are still open as of August 31st. We jump on our pavement ones pretty quickly. Our drainage is a little behind, but sometimes that's, we'll get to that. Vegetation and then dead trees. So the reason I bring this up is because with Lynn Keenan and myself, and us also at the top of VDOT, we're trying to move towards preventative maintenance. We're trying to get into a cyclical programmatic process of doing our ditches, of fixing the roads, so that way it can help kind of the work orders to go down. And right now we feel as a department that we're chasing our tail. So we'll be doing a pothole on one side of the county, and then we'll drive all the way over instead of kind of, like, we're reacting to work orders instead of programmatically trying to solve these issues. So having said that, we're trying to take our work orders now because we don't want to dismiss them. We're trying to take them out now and trying to have our area headquarters fill out like an 18-month plan of what area they're going to be in and what they'll be doing, and then try to fit work orders into that plan instead of being a reactive agency. We want to try to be a more proactive agency. And that's Lynn Keenan and I have felt that way, and we're getting, from the top is also putting that out there too. I did have a video of a pothole. It's called a pothole killer. It's this new type of machinery that can fill potholes a lot quicker than we do by hand. So that's another way we're trying to help these matters, is new equipment. Another piece of equipment we're trying to get is an ATHI loader that will help us dig out ditches quicker than we do with a mini excavator or a gradle. Essentially the way it works is kind of like a paving operation. I don't know if you all are familiar with that, but the asphalt backs up into the paver, kind of locks in, and they drive. Well, an ATHI loader is the same way, where it kind of backs up into this part that digs out the ditch a little bit and just pours the dirt right into the dump truck. And so instead of a mini excavator digging, moving, dumping, coming back, so save us a little bit of time. So what other options can we have to help stretch our money as far as trying to get programmatic as well? Because we have, you saw the lane miles, and this fiscal year we are paving in Spotsylvania County roughly 40 miles. So if you do the math, 40 miles a year, 100 or 1,700, that's not going to work out, and your roads are going to fall apart. So we have to come up with innovative ideas to try to keep our road life longer. So one of those ideas is Cape Seal. And as you can see from the display, you have a tack on the bottom. It's that blackish area. And then you have the chip, which is aggregate, not real big aggregate, but kind of fine aggregate. And then with Cape Seal, you put a slurry, which is another like tack right on top of that to keep the chip seal there. Okay, and that's, so kind of before we put it down, that's what it looks like on the left, and then after, you can put pavement striping on plant mix. That's what it looks like in a subdivision. Another thing we offer is surface treatment. It is very similar to Cape Seal. It's actually the exact same thing, except you don't have that last little lift of tack that keeps the aggregate kind of looking black. So some of the advantage, we can accomplish more surfacing lane miles with the funding that we have. It extends the life of our asphalt. Some of the challenges we're running into is it requires more public outreach just so people kind of understand what's going on with it. It's temporary, for surface treatment, it's temporarily rough, because like I said, it doesn't have that seal on the top. So there's a little bit of loose material that didn't connect with the tack on the bottom that has to be blown off. With that light traffic and lower speeds, it takes a little bit longer to blow that off. So just for the money portions of it, if you look at the bottom, that's basically what it costs to do your typical plant mix with a 4-inch mill. It's almost $400,000 a lane mile. And then if you look at surface treatment and Cape Seal, it's significantly cheaper. And that's why we're looking to use these types of things.
Mr. Chair. Hey, let me,
Yes, sir.
that surface treatment, what is that again? Is that basically where you're putting down the tar and pouring on the rock?
So you have a tar layer, and it strengthens the strength of the roadway surface. You have a tar layer that goes right on top of the pavement or another surface.
Is it called chip and tar, basically?
Essentially, but it's tar, and then you chip it, and then you blow off the excess. Yes, sir.
That one, I wish y'all would scratch right on off of there. I tell you, all it does is, I'm trying to use the appropriate words and stuff I can say in public. It just makes people very upset when they get on, get on those roads and all you get is tar all over your car and equipment. I know at Company 9, they had to take an ambulance down the road after they were just starting that stuff, and a brand new ambulance, and it's black in the back.
And like I said, with our challenges, the responsibility falls on VDOT to get that word out. These are the roads we're going to be doing this, and the responsibility falls on us to get that
Right.
outreach out there.
I'm just telling you, from many years of traveling that chip and tar stuff, it really does. I don't know what you're trying to accomplish with it, but it does very little. It doesn't fix the potholes, doesn't fix the dips, it doesn't fix any of the really, in my opinion.
Yes, sir. So with the potholes are a systematic issue.
I know.
And you could put plant mix on top of a pothole and it'll pop back up. The issue that we're having with potholes is we haven't done a cyclical system in decades of getting our ditches to get the water away from the roadway. So if you don't get the water away from the roadway, the potholes are just going to keep coming back. It doesn't matter if you put surface treatment, Cape Seal, or plant mix. The pothole will come back. So part of that is what I was saying with our ATHE loader. We're trying to figure out ways to get our operators to get more of that ditching programmatic in there so we can help our roads last longer.
Okay, well,
Mr. Chair.
good luck.
Hey, just to follow up to that real quick, because my neighborhood was done with the surface treatment. It was horrible. Dogs couldn't walk on it. I mean, skateboarders couldn't, good or bad on that. Couldn't use it, but so, and it took years to beat it down and to where it's, the dogs weren't, So the Cape Seal sounds like a better solution, but where can we go see that? Is it done anywhere in the county, anywhere?
So Mineral Springs right now is having Cape Seal done on it.
Okay.
Bowling Green as well, if you wanted to travel down to Caroline, is also doing it.
So Mineral Springs is being done right now?
Yes.
All right. Thanks.
Any other questions about that?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Marshall?
your reporting system that you have on the internet, I spoke to Lynn about it, and she wanted me to encourage my constituents to use the online reporting. My constituents haven't been getting a good response from the online reporting, so I did it myself. It's been over 6 weeks. I haven't heard anything back from y'all. It's about a drainage issue where water's backing up into the road, stays there for weeks after it rains. Creates a hazard. It needs to be addressed. It's on my road of all places, and that's why I reported it, because, I can deal with a hole of water, and the folks that live there that know the road can deal with it because they go by it every day. But that's something that we need to get fixed. You have it says 72 hours, then you have 10 days to look at it, and it says that they'll get back to you. If I can't get a reply sitting on the board, I don't expect you, if you're not going to reply to me, I don't think you're replying to anybody else. That's the way I feel about it. So we need to come up with a better system, or just be more responsive to the system that you have. Because That's the folks, they follow these protocols and they go through the calls and the computer, and then they call me, and then I try to pass on the concerns. And some of these concerns are not, just a pothole in the, on the side of the road. Some of these things are they cause hazards and cause accidents.
Yes. So if it's an emergency, it goes to what we have called the TOC, which is it's an emergency system. That goes straight to them, and the area headquarters superintendent gets a direct phone call if it's an emergency.
Okay.
Now, I failed to mention this on this slide, but so on average, our operators get 16 work orders a business day. So we have 11 per area headquarters. Now, that's a tough task. Now, I'm not being dismissive at all. We are trying to figure out a way to improve our customer service. We made some of our own fake work orders to kind of see what happens. And we've put some of our area headquarters have been saying, well, we've been responding because there's supposed to be this thing where you put a comment in there and it texts them or emails them whatever they click their preferred correspondence. And we did a few, and they're not, when they put in their comment, it's not showing up and it's not being directed to the customer. So what we have Fredericksburg Residency have done is, one, we've contacted Richmond to see if they can fix that. The second thing we've done is my office is giving to our area headquarters, if they're coming up with on that 10 days, we're going to shoot them out a little Excel spreadsheet like, hey, this is the work order number. You're running up right on the time that you have to do it. And we've also, instead of hitting the comments to return to customer, we've put the internal ones working, the comments. So we've put it in there so that way if at least someone calls, our internal people can see they have looked at it, they put in their comment, this is the recommendation. And then we've also told them, we've set up 18-month plans. We've tried to have them do this programmatic thing. So if, let's say on your street, you have that drainage issue. They look in their 18-month plan and they say, okay, I'm gonna be in this area doing drainage work in December. And they'll schedule it in there and they're supposed to put on their comments, we're getting to this in December. And that's how we're trying to improve our customer service. There's a little bit of bugs with the technical system that we've sent to central office, Richmond, to try to figure out.
So while you're working at bugs, is it okay if we send you a couple emails?
Yes, I'd prefer them to come from Ed, just so we can kind of streamline and keep it,
We can
like I have
handle
a
that.
list.
We can get them to you they can come from anybody here on this, setting up here. As long as you get them and we get to, because it seems like the technology portion of this isn't working properly, and
It's not.
you're trying to get it fixed. I understand it takes time with stuff like that, but, we want to at least know when you're going to fix the road and that you've received that something's wrong with the road.
I understand that.
Mr. Skinner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, appreciate it. So you said it was 800 for roads to call in if you have an issue with the road. Who decides, like, let's say you got a tree down, let's say you got a line, electrical line down across the road. We call that number, but who decides what is an emergency and what isn't? How does that work there? I mean, is there an emergency number for such things as trees across the road, or do we still call the 800 for roads?
So if you go to the 800 for roads, you get, it's called the TOC. They are in Salem, and it's basically kind of like a bunch of people sitting in offices answering phone calls. They hear what you're saying, and they decipher if it's an emergency or if it's just general maintenance that needs to be scheduled. If it's general maintenance, it goes into the email system, it gets emailed out and put into like our file. If it's an emergency, once they're done getting the information from whoever calls, they call that superintendent directly. It goes straight to his cell phone. All of our superintendents are required to have their cell phones with them, even when they sleep and they're supposed to be there.
What do you consider like a pothole that's about 8 inches deep and about 2.5 feet wide? I mean, again, if the person says, we got it deep, I think I would like to know what you all consider an emergency. Because you said they got 10 days to respond or to look at it.
To look at.
Okay, so after 10 days, they decide it's not an emergency, and when do they fill it? Let's just take a pothole, for instance. So 10 days, they say, yes, it's just regular pothole, okay? Not doing any real damage to the car. So how long until after 10 days will we see something like that get fixed?
So, as I said before, we're trying this new thing with the 18-month plan. So if they're doing potholes, now if it's on Route 1, it'll be bumped up to the list because it's a primary. But if it's in a subdivision, it's going to get scheduled into their work wherever it is on their 18-month plan. And they're supposed to communicate that in their comments.
So you said it goes into an 18-month work plan? So when the constituent calls me and says he got a pothole in this hole on one of his streets, I can say to him, oh, it'll be fixed within 18 months.
Unfortunately, just because
Really?
because we have 33 people and 1,717 lane miles, unfortunately.
Okay, I understand that. So how do we compare to Stafford, who doesn't have the 405 square miles that we have?
So Stafford's actually worse in their response time. I'm just being frank. We are lacking on Stafford. They have 22 operators for all their lane miles, and so we're falling behind, and we're trying to figure out a plan for Stafford.
Well, I got to be honest with you, and I mean, I know what the constituent's going to tell me when I tell them that, and I don't think 18 months is an acceptable answer by this county to any constituent that says, you know, because all that pothole does is get bigger and bigger. Then it becomes damaging to the car.
Understood. I understand that.
Okay, so honestly, we've had good relationships with VDOT here, and all the people that are here, and welcome aboard. I mean, but you may regret taking this job, unfortunately. But I'm glad you went to high school here and we graduate and everything else. But the reality is our citizens need better than what we get. Okay, and I know one of the biggest problems is we start with Sean, then we go to Kyle, and you got to have somebody who's going to stay, and I hope you mean that you will be here, and maybe throughout your career you can figure out how we can make this better, okay? Because it certainly has to be thing. I believe South Lee's Hill was done with the slurry, maybe?
The Cape Sue?
Yeah, it's not that tar and gravel, they wouldn't do that. So the next thing I'm going to bring to you is that way back when Sean was here, it was on a plan to do Lee's Hill South and then North Lee's Hill would. Well, ever since Sean's left, there's been no indications other through Ed that we've asked for you or VDOT to take a look at when I can expect to tell my roads are now about 22, 23 years old.
You said Lee's Hill?
Lee's Hill North.
North.
Okay? And it's not as big, it's about 1/3 of the size of Lee's Hill South. Okay. It's a 2,000 house community. So I'd be looking for that and everything. And again, I'd like a list if you can, or at least what does VDOT consider an emergency?
Okay, I'll get you that
Okay,
list.
and then that way we can estimate what type of reaction we're going to get. Yep, thank you. Thank you very much, and welcome aboard.
I'm excited to be here.
Did you have more slides, or?
I did. And then my contact.
Ah, that's what we need. We tried to save you, Jonathan.
That's all right.
Mr. Chair, if I may, it may be easier if the board does run those VDOT requests through me so that I can track them. And that I can, make sure that I can get back to VDOT and see if we can expedite some of the work.
Well, we did do it through Doug, I believe, right?
Yes, sir.
Prior to Doug leaving, he was always the one we called and he would handle it, so.
Yeah, either Doug or I.
I certainly hope we have somebody that we can go through.
Mr. Ross?
Hey, looking forward to working with you. Great brief, very informative. It's one of the best we've had for quite some time, probably since Sean's been here. Very informative. I do have a question, like if we do have an emergency, in particular, what I would used to do quite frequently is sometimes, and it hasn't happened for a long time, but Route 3, the light sinks. I think there's little things in the tower that might go out, and I could text Sean and just say, hey, something's wrong, it's this, or even after the fact at 6 o'clock on Saturday, this was happening. Are you open to those kinds of things coming from the
For
work?
signals, absolutely,
Okay.
because I have the on-call contractor number
Okay.
for signals, then so they can just get out there right away. We have been experiencing a little bit of issues with those ones that you're talking about. It's a new technology. And there's some bugs in it. So.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Mr. Benton?
Yeah, congratulations on the job. Just out of curiosity, what part of Spotsylvania did you live in?
So I was raised in the Massaponax area,
Ah,
well
see.
before it was developed.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's city boy, man.
I remember when Route 3 was just a two-lane road, and we just had the Kmart and the Walmart that wasn't even a super Walmart.
All right, I'm gonna give you that one. All right,
And then now I live in the Chancellor area.
good deal. I'm glad to have you on board. I just again, I just please, at least in the Livingston district, please keep that tar and stuff out of it, man. It does no good on our roads back there. And as far as the potholes, I mean, my thing with Lynn, when I've had some conversation with her, and even Sean, the quality of work, at least out in the country where I am, it's just not. I made this statement, and then all of a sudden I saw several in my social media comments, so I know I wasn't all wrong. But I mentioned to her, some of these potholes, they're stuff. You got a guy out there with a bag dumping it in there, and you get from a pothole to a speed bump.
Yes.
And I just wish we were given the same quality as some of the more.
So that pothole video that I failed to have uploaded, that's supposed to help with that. So instead of a person.
But you're going to be doing it out in the country too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I
I'm
believe
going to hold you to it.
I believe in. I came from Louisa's rural, so I enjoy rural areas. So, so that I mean, again, so we have that new piece of equipment that's coming to us probably within the next month or so.
Alrighty.
And then again, like I said, potholes are a systematic problem. They're not a problem. I mean, they are a problem themselves, but they're a sign of a systematic problem.
Oh, absolutely.
So we're trying to get into that programmatic thing, like I said, with the 18-month plan, where we can go and start pooling our ditches to try to get water away from the roads. Because what happens is the water gets into the roadbed, and then you get into the winter where you get that freeze-thaw effect, and it pushes.
They're gonna fail.
Yeah, pushes everything all over the place. So I could keep dumping bags of asphalt in there, and the same thing's going to happen in the next few months. So.
Alrighty. And for Livingston District, I've been working on this for a year and a half and gotten nowhere. If you just throw me a bone, just something. I'm leaving December, so I won't be here. You'll have a new person sitting here barking at you.
Okay.
But Sunset on Belmont Road.
I drove Belmont Road 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so you know the area?
Mm-hmm.
Are you guessing where I'm going to be talking about?
I know where you're going with it. We do have a plan for it. We have to make sure it goes through our channels before I promise exactly what type of treatments on it or anything like that. But we do have a plan for it. It's
Okay.
in our plan.
Any timeline on the plan?
I'll reach out to Ed once it gets closer to finalized.
All right, I'll take that. I appreciate it, man. Nice meeting you.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I do. I have a comment for you, please. I didn't know, usually when you're here, you go through the different districts that you're doing things in.
Have that if you'd like to go.
Are you going to go through that?
I
or-
can, if you all
Okay,
would
thank
like.
you. I'll hold my question until after that.
Okay. Do you guys have that in front of you?
No.
Okay, all right, I'll just go through. So, Battlefield District, we have the I-95, Route 1, South Point Parkway exit. That is currently, the plans are being finalized right now. They're at 60% completion. They should be looking to finish them by November. The Route 711 South Point Parkway crossover, that's being done in conjunction with that, so those plans are also 60% finished, and they'll be finished around the same time. The Route 1 Business Lafayette Boulevard turn lane at Harrison Road. Right now, that's in right-of-way. That's where that is. Route 636, Hood Drive intersection improvements. The preliminary design work is underway on that one. Any questions for the Battlefield District? The Berkeley District, Route 606 Mud Tavern Road over the I-95 bridge replacement. Construction is complete. And then we have Route 658 Mount Olive Road bridge replacement. That is also complete. The Route 606 Mud Tavern roadway improvements west of I-95. That project, the right-of-way is also underway in that one. Any questions for the Berkeley District? Chancellor District, the rural rustic on Spotswood Furnace, that's complete minus the guardrail. It's being installed this week by the bridge. The preliminary engineering for Route 620 Harrison Road reconstruction, that's going to public hearing October 24th at the Harrison Road Elementary School. Old Park at Ashley offset right turn lane. That's a safety project, and it's currently in design, looking to be advertised fall 2021. Any questions for the Chancellor District? Cortland District, just kind of an FYI on the bridge on I-95, construction's ongoing for southbound. The northbound is currently, note for that one. I believe that one is still in design. Yes, still in design for that one, for the northbound. Any questions for Courtney?
I don't have any questions other than if you could take a look at the lights. Every once in a while, they just seem off, but I'll let you know when that happens.
Okay, sounds good. Lee Hill District, Route 17 Mills Drive Bridge replacement, right-of-ways in process with that one. Are there any questions for the Lee Hill District?
I do. Number one, Route 1 and Hood Drive also, and it's on Mine Road that I'm concerned about, especially during at 4:30, where Mine Road is starting to be a very, very heavy traffic road. So when they get up to the McDonald's, you have to usually, if you're by the entrance to McDonald's, it's probably 2 lights for you to get through that intersection. So I would seriously ask you to take a look at the timing on that light. I know you try to coordinate that whole thing going down the Route 1 corridor, but I'm having the same problem over at Market Street too. And that is that sometimes you can see cars backed up down over the hill to where the Hampton Inn is. And so it's not easy, I understand that, but I'd rather, if I'm really back, I understand 2 lights. But it should be reasonable. And I think you took care of the problem at Route 1 and 17, the Wawa. Before it was 3 cars got out. It was 3 seconds before. It never, ever hit the 7-second one. I was there the other day, especially during lunchtime and stuff. It may have been longer. And would you check into it that they did look into that for me, because I didn't get stuck. I mean, there used to be 10 cars coming from the car wash and also Wawa. And 3 would get every light. So I think you've done that, but double check, please.
Okay.
And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, Livingston District, Woolfolk Road, Rural Rustic, that project's complete. Mount Holly Drive, Rural Rustic, that project's complete. Dovey Road, Rural Rustic, that project's complete. Sullivan Road, Rural Rustic. That is, the sub-base for that project's complete. We can pave it before the season ends. My recommendation is to let it sit over the winter with the sub-base exposed, because then you recognize those potholes. They show themselves, and then you can go out and dig underneath and kind of fix the base stone. That would be my recommendation, but we can certainly pave it before the season.
Whatever's going to make it last longer. I'll go by your expertise.
And then Maston Lane Rural Rustic is complete. Do you have any other questions?
No, I will go back on your, the preventative stuff. And, at one point with Sean, I kind of went through and just the complaints we get yearly, especially it's mostly mowing, keeping sight distance. I had gone over that with him, and we had a kind of a plan, and the first year everything went through, but then with all the changes, it seems like it's been dropped.
So we did notice the increase in work orders on mowing. So we are developing a plan. I'm trying to work with Rappahannock Regional. I'm trying to work with contractors, and I'm trying to work our state forces to actually get a comprehensive list and actual dates of mowing, obviously inclement weather impending. But we're trying to get comprehensive about it.
Right. Well, there's just some key areas that were complaints every single year, and they are bad intersections where if the grass has grown up, where the limbs have come over, you can't, you roll down the windows and hope for the best. And if for the medium ones, if you could take a look at Lawyers Road and Jones Powell, had a school bus driver.
Lawyers and Jones?
Jones Powell. Right at if you're on Lawyers Road, heading towards the state park, I'm going to call that south. When you try to continue, you'll come to a stop sign where you have to stop on Lawyers, and you yield to the traffic on Jones Powell and all. But if you're looking right, the bus drivers cannot, there's very little sight distance. And y'all came in one time and really did a nice job of putting those limbs down and the grass, and you could, it was a lot safer.
Okay.
And then if you actually make the turn left, there's a bunch of growth on a tree. Looks like poison ivy or so. I don't know what it is, but it's all over this tree, and it's grown out where that blocks, if you're coming down Jones Powell, continuing on to Lawyers, you can't see around that curve if you want to make the turn.
Right. So farther down Jones, you said?
Yes. And then the gentleman before you, who was temporary, I'd asked him to take a look at Days Bridge and Belmont. If you're coming off of Days Bridge onto Belmont, I wish you'd turn down Days Bridge and taken a look coming back, because I used to haul hay out of that, and you might as well playing Russian roulette. It's a horrible intersection. I'm sure somebody's going to have to go up and talk to the homeowner to see if they'll allow some more grading of that hillside, you really do. You got to roll down your windows and just hope for the best. I really can't believe there's no more accidents than there are there. I think it's just a matter. It's like a ticking time bomb there.
Okay.
And if it's not mowed down real good, your sight distance is just like that. Those are two primary ones that I've heard from this year.
Okay.
But thank you.
Salem District, we don't have anything going on. So, have any questions?
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that brings us to presentations by staff. Item number 1, the Community Development System update has been moved, and the vote on the SUP has been moved. So we have the presentation of the county's new website. In presenting that, I believe we have Jane Reeve, Paul Mann, and Michelle McGinnis from our staff.
May I have the floor computer, please? Good afternoon. We are here today to present to you the website we believe as we're ready to roll it out. Paul and Michelle have been working with about 4 dozen users without the county to go through this system and make sure that it is ready for go live. We've done a lot of testing, we've done a lot of evaluation, we've done a lot of training. We have been working with some users outside in the community to try to get some feedback. We have not had a lot come back so far, but we will also, once we go live, have a feedback item on the main page. And Paul, if you can show that real quick for me. We've also presented this to the CBRC last month. We gave them a tour and demo of the website. They were complimentary of the work that we had done. And had no feedback as well either. So the feedback page is on our main website, or on our main page, and it does ask for some information. Paul, you have to confirm for me, is some of this information mandatory? Do they have to fill out everything on this?
No.
Okay, so we will be looking for feedback, and we will be aggressively continuing to ask for feedback moving forward once we go live. We are planning to take this live next Monday. Unless there's something that we get from the board today that leads us to believe we need to change those plans. So I'm going to turn this over to Paul and Michelle. And I want to thank Paul and Michelle both. They have worked really hard on this site, and I think they've got a really good product to show you. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll quickly go through the website, starting with the homepage and going through the various elements on it, and then show you a few of the department pages. So on the main page, the menus that we have here, starting with the government, showing elected officials, boards and commissions, and the various departments. The services and how do I sections of the menu reflect some of the items that citizens come to the site for the most. The business section relates to some of the pages on the economic development and tourism pages. The visitor section is mostly the tourism page, subpages. The banner image you have here, section here is a rotating banner. Easy to change these images out. The system management, the content management system is very easy to use for staff. We have the social media links here for the county. The search engine, I can't really show you a demonstration of that, unfortunately, because it doesn't turn on until the site goes live. It's tied to our domain, but it's vastly superior to our current one. Below the banner image, we have some quick link icons, and these represent some of the things that people come to for the most, but also things that we want to steer people to. So these are also easy to switch in and out. County news section represents news of a variety of categories, and we try to keep this fresh, so we have some stopping on dates on these. And going down, we have a tabbed section for press releases and calendars. The press releases, obviously, news items of the press release category. Meetings, events, and county notices. In the footer, obviously, contact information, helpful links, and site links. Going over to the boards and commissions subpages. You'll notice one of the really nice things about this site is the menu system. Makes it really easy for users to find pages at 2, 3, 4 levels down without having to go through each page to get there. So it's going to make it really nice for users to navigate through the site. Looking at the finance department, I pulled this up because they've got a lot of content, obviously, and it's a good example of a typical department site. Again, the menu on the left for the subpages and multi-level. Obviously, in the middle is the area for description or whatever the content they want to put in there. Standardizing on contact information over on the right. We have several departments that have what are called department header packages, and as an example here to show you this fire and rescue, the department header sites give the department a very unique look and feel. Obviously their own logo, colors, they have their own menu items, they have their own banner images, their own links to their social media. They have their quick link icons that they choose, and their own news section, their own press release, calendar and events, and their own footer information. All of this, staff has been trained how to use this and change these items out as they wish. Another example of a department header site is Parks and Rec. Again, you can see the unique colors and menu items they have. The museum also, and then we have 4 others listed here. And Jane mentioned the feedback form. The feedback form is set up so that, just like the one now, what we have when somebody submits it, it goes to a distribution list and then gets sent out. We're going to be modifying this a little bit based on what type of comment it is, so it directs automatically to the right people within the department. So that's the new website.
Can you go back?
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I think it looks great. I'm not easily impressed, and just as you're scrolling through here, I think you've done a fine job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I want to point out one more thing really quickly. Given the public's demand always for transparency, we have now made this, it used to be a little icon up in the top right-hand corner of our primary page now. We've now made it front and center. If you click on Open Government for me, that right there is basically our transparency page as we build that out and continue to add to it. It's a conglomeration of information that's already found on our website that is located in one area. That's a pretty heavily visited website now. They've been able to find that icon in the top right-hand corner. This is going to make it more dominant to make sure that we are as transparent as possible to the public and the information is out there and not as hard to find. So, thank you.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions? If not, thank you.
Mr. Chair, that brings us to informational matters. Carl?
No report.
I have some updates on some projects for the county. The animal shelter expansion and renovation, the utility work continues for the new building addition and foundation prep work has begun. The judicial center expansion and renovation, construction of the new mechanical yard is underway and mechanical equipment has been ordered. Dominion Energy is working on building service relocation. Company 3, staff is working to determine if the new Company 3 fire station can be co-located at the Eric Park facility with minimal impact to the park. Hunting Run Phase 2, grading is currently underway for the projects at Hunting Run. In addition, the new facility well is being developed to meet VDH requirements. Berkeley and Todd's Tavern Community Centers, staff's been working with the Virginia Department of Health in regards to drinking water wells at these facilities. Based on those discussions, the level of service in these facilities will be reduced while new wells are constructed. Staff will update the board when a schedule is developed for new well installation and restoration of level of service. Company 6, the stakeholder kickoff meeting has been completed. The schematic design workshops are underway. And finally, the Livingston landfill development jurisdictional request determinations were sent to the Army Corps of Engineers for formal wetland delineation associated with Phase 2 expansion. I have an S-Power update. Construction has commenced under the early clearing and grading permit issued for the substation. 3 complaints have been received and addressed by the Erosion Division. The first was a dust complaint, which was addressed with the use of a water truck. The second was that of an access road being constructed too close to an adjacent property. This complaint was voided after coordination with the interim zoning administrator that resulted in the determination that the road is permitted in that location. The third complaint resulted from the first field inspection in which it was determined that work was being performed outside of the approved plan limits. A notice of violation was issued to stop work in the impacted areas, stabilize the areas, and submit a plan amendment. The plan amendment was submitted on September 5th and approved on September 9th. An early clearing and grading permit application for the 165 megawatt facility has been submitted, but it is not accepted pending final approval of the erosion and stormwater portions of that site plan. The first revision to the 165 megawatt site plan was resubmitted August 19th and is currently under review. And building permits are currently under review for the bridges, the substation, and several construction trailers. And that concludes my report.
Mr. Skinner?
Hey, Ed, is the retention pond at the animal shelter complete now?
It is completed with the exception of a small section of fencing that's still to be constructed.
The trees have been placed in where we said?
The trees have been planted. There's actually vegetation starting to grow in the area that was excavated.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, that takes us to closed meeting.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this will be a resolution to adjourn and close meeting. Whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn into closed meeting for discussion, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the county, specifically Director of Department of Economic Development and Tourism, employees of the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, and employees of the Department of Planning. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn a closed meeting for discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business's or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community, specifically a technology industry, healthcare industry, recreational entertainment business, government industry, and energy distribution business. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn a closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by a public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel, specifically the application for special use permit 18-0011, AT&T at Peace United Methodist Church. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn into a closed meeting for discussion of plans to protect public safety as it relates to terrorist activity or specific cybersecurity threats or vulnerabilities, and briefings by staff members, legal counsel, or law enforcement or emergency service officials concerning actions taken to respond to such matters or a related threat to public safety. Discussion of the information subject to the exclusion of subdivision 2 or 14 of section 2.2 3705.2, where discussion in open meeting would jeopardize the safety of any person or the security of any facility, building, structure, information technology system, or software program, or discussion of reports or plans related to the security of any governmental facility, building, or structure, or the safety of persons using such facility, building, or structure, specifically cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities, and plans of action related thereto. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors desires to adjourn in a closed meeting for a discussion of the award of a public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviews or bidders or offerers, and discussion of the terms or scope of such contract, where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, specifically a purchase contract and a contract for legal services. And whereas pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2 3711A1, 5, 8, 19, and 29, such discussions may occur in closed meeting. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors does hereby authorize discussion of the aforestated matters.
So moved. Okay.
Seven yes, motion passes.
vote, and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2, 3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors hereby returns to open meeting and certifies by roll call vote that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and identified in the motion to convene in a closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the closed meeting.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Mr. Skinner?
Aye.
Mr. Yakubowski?
Aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Before we proceed with business, I believe we have a Boy Scout in the room who's working on his merit badge. Would you like to come up and introduce yourself? At the, well,
Can you reach the
at
mic?
one of the microphones, yeah.
There you go.
Hello, I'm Jordan Stone with Troop 21 from Fredericksburg, Virginia, Peace United Methodist Church.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Skinner?
Mr. Chair, at this time, I would like to table the Community Development System update by Information Services and Central Square Technologies until further notice. Make that as a motion.
Yes, if there's no discussion, we can vote.
7 yes, motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, please, I'd like to bring up, as we held out on the consent agenda item, item number 8, the approval of the budget adjustment and appropriation necessary for funding additional legal services costs for social services.
If there's no discussion, we can vote.
Five yes, with Mr. Yakubowski and Mr. Skinner voting no, motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, that brings us to public presentations and comment. Amy, do we have anybody signed up?
No, sir.
Is there anyone who did not sign up who wishes to speak at this time?
Name is Anthony LaFaro. I'm in the Chancellor District. When I was a junior in high school, I was sitting around a group of classmates, and one of them just randomly started calling a young woman there a troll. And I don't mean the internet kind. Just randomly saying she looked like a troll, making negative remarks to her. And he and I got into it a little bit, verbally, and then he threatened me physically. I tried to walk away, but he followed me. And eventually it came to what that comes to, and I had to hit him. I really didn't have much choice. And he got a black eye, and he ran out of the class, and he ran and he found the teacher wasn't there at the time. And he said, "Look at my eye, look at my eye, look at my eye," even though he started the whole thing. I was reminded of this when I was listening to board reports from the August meeting that you all had, when several members of this board tried to cry victim regarding statements that were made the previous night at the school board meeting, in which the school board defended themselves against false accusations by our Chancellor District resident. And several of them, including Mr. Ross, Mr. Benton, and Mr. McLaughlin himself, dragged teachers into it, the SEA, and our public educators. Mr. Ross said that he felt like he had been under attack by SEA since 2015, which is interesting because I remember distinctly that when teachers were supposed to get a raise the following year, flyers went out demeaning them and belittling them as being greedy around the county. That was after somebody who Mr. Ross referred to as a close personal friend had made a demeaning remark to an educator while she stood here speaking. And then phone calls went out encouraging people to go out and vote against the school board budget and the teacher pay raises. Somebody came to the following meetings saying they were from Americans for Prosperity, an organization that's listed as a sponsor to the Fredericksburg, Virginia Patriots, saying they were the ones who made the phone calls. Mr. Ross had previously been involved in that organization, and their chairman at the time admitted to knowing who put out the flyers. So for Mr. Ross to say he felt like he's been under attack when he had been engaging with people in the community who had been demeaning and belittling teachers is absolutely disgusting to me. Furthermore, the following year, that same organization, the Patriots, were allowed to give a 15-minute presentation to dispute the findings of the Evergreen study, a third-party independent study that stated that teachers were underpaid. And I told members of the board that that allowed that they should be ashamed of themselves if they're involved in that organization. Mr. Ross denied being involved, even though his profile was on their Facebook page and their webpage. He denied even knowing what the pages were. The bottom line is Mr. McLaughlin lied in his statements, and he lied about whether or not, I'm holding an email sent by the county administrator about whether or not his alerting the FLS to the investigation in which this whole thing started could compromise the investigation and the money spent.
Sir, your time has expired.
Let's see if there are any other speakers. Is there anyone else who did not sign up who wishes to speak at this time? We'll close the public comment. Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I just want to say, coming out here and making up, I have no doubt that flyers went out, but let me guarantee you, I had nothing to do with that, and I don't appreciate it. If I did, I would say I did. But, there's a lot of bad things that happen in Spotsylvania County, and I don't think anybody would appreciate anybody else coming up and saying, that happened and you're associated with them, so you must have approved it. You must have had something to do with it. And I can say for the record, I respect our teachers, our public servants with all my heart. Our public teachers are the heart and soul of Spotsylvania County, and I would like to see them get what they deserve, and they deserve a heck of a lot because they deal with a lot of stuff that most of us don't do. But what I don't appreciate are false accusations, and that's exactly what this is. I appreciate you coming up and speaking, but again, I love our teachers. I love what they do for our community. I have children in the Spotsylvania County school system. I think it's a wonderful system. Thank you.
Ready for public hearings?
Yes, sir. That brings us to our first public hearing. It's the approval of issuance of water and sewer system revenue bonds and authorization of future public hearing for budget adjustment for bond proceeds. And we have Bonnie Jewell here this evening.
Thank you. Good evening. This public hearing is for comment on the issuance of up to $24 million in new money water and sewer revenue bonds for purposes of funding water and sewer capital projects that were approved in the CIP you adopted in April. I'm going to make a distinction in my remarks here between new money bonds and refunding bonds because they are two separate things. There is no public hearing required for refunding bonds, so tonight's public hearing is in reference to the up to $24 million in new money water and sewer revenue bonds. Debt service for these new money revenue bonds was included in the fiscal year 2020 adopted budget. And following the public hearing tonight, staff seeks the board's approval of documents that are in your agenda packet to include a resolution authorizing the issuance of up to $90 million in bonds. That's up to $24 million for the new money bonds and up to $70 million for potential refunding of outstanding water and sewer revenue bonds to gain debt service savings going forward. The refunding bonds, again, are not part of tonight's public hearing, as refunding bonds do not require a public hearing. Additionally, staff tonight seeks the board's authorization of a separate future public hearing to be held at a date to be determined following sale of the bonds to receive comment on the budget adjustment that will be necessary to the fiscal year 2020 budget to reflect these bond proceeds, issuance costs, and any payoff of any bonds that are refunded depending upon the market conditions at the time of the sale. Following any questions you might have, I will ask that you please open tonight's public hearing.
Any questions or comments from the board? If not, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up to speak?
No, sir.
Is there anyone who did not sign up who wishes to speak to this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close this public hearing. Motion to approve from Mr. Skinner. Is there any discussion? If not, we can vote.
7 yes, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, that brings us to the next public hearing. Public hearing for the grant application request for the federal fiscal year 2019 for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program, and it's a local solicitation.
Good evening, Board. Spotsylvania County is eligible to receive a formula grant in the amount of $28,196. The Sheriff's Office would like to utilize these funds towards the purchase of an automatic target system for the firearms training. Although the program grant does not require a local match, the cost of the equipment will exceed the available grant funds. The Sheriff's Office is willing to make up the additional costs of $30,050 through the use of the FY Grant 20 adopted budget, as well as asset forfeiture funds, and a combination of these. Also, the grant guidelines stipulate that the public be notified of the grant application, as well as be able to provide an opportunity to comment on the application during this public hearing. So I'll open it up if you have any comments.
Does anyone on the board have any questions? This requirement for this grant about the public having chance to comment, is that a general requirement from now on, or is that specific to this grant?
They weren't really sure, so they just wanted to go ahead and make sure that we fulfilled that.
All right. If there's nothing else from the board, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up?
No, sir.
Is there anyone who did not sign up who wishes to speak to this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Bring it back to the board.
Motion to approve?
Motion to approve from Mr. McLaughlin. Is there any discussion? If not, we can vote.
Seven yes, motion passes.
That brings us to the third public hearing this evening. It's a public hearing related to an ordinance authorizing Spotsylvania County School Division to install and operate video monitoring systems in or on their school buses. We have Mr. Upperco from the School Division and Major Skibo from the Sheriff's Office. And Carl Holston, our county attorney.
May I have the floor, computer? As you may recall, the board authorized this public hearing back at its meeting in August. This proposed change to the county's ordinances authorize Spotsylvania County's Public School Division to install and operate a video monitoring system in or on the school buses for the purposes of enforcing Virginia Code 46.2-844A. And it also requires that the civil penalties collected as a result of that enforcement be payable to the Spotsylvania County School Division. The board adopts the ordinance. Spotsylvania County Schools has represented that there would be no financial impact to the county, as they intend to contract with a company or hope to contract with a company which will pay for the cost of installation, maintenance, data storage, and monitoring of the video system in exchange for a portion of the civil penalties collected from the enforcement. And that is all authorized by Virginia Code. There is expected to be some cost to law enforcement related to the enforcement of the civil penalty. The exact amount will depend on several variables, including number of violations. And Spotsylvania County Sheriff's Office and schools, I believe, are working towards figuring that out. Here on the slide is just the meat of the ordinance. Again, you'll see that it provides the authorization and directs the payments to the Spotsylvania County Public School Division. I'm going to leave this slide, and I'm going to put on Mr. Upperco's slide presentation. Bear with me just one moment.
In the interest of time, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon or this evening. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we'll get started. I know we're getting late in the evening, and some of this information is review for the Board of Supervisors, but I'm hoping that the public will pick up on some of these figures as well. The Transportation Department has participated in voluntary annual surveys conducted by bus drivers on designated dates from the 2014 through 2017. The drivers observed and reported illegal passing by vehicles when buses were stopped and utilizing their red lights and stop arms. And you can see some of these compelling numbers here. In 2014, there were 131 illegal vehicle passes. In 2015, 112. In 2016, 178. And in 2017, which was the last year that the Virginia Department of Education required that we submit these kind of numbers, there were 141 illegal passes. Remember, that's in one day. In January of this past year, House Bill 2344 was passed by the Virginia House and a companion bill by the Senate. The passage required the DMV to release certain vehicle data to private vendors operating video monitoring system on school buses, and this helps settle former legal issues, and stop arm cameras are again a potential option to combat illegal school bus passing. How do they work? Cameras are affixed to the bus's front stop arms, which do deploy when buses stop to pick up and deliver children. These cameras take pictures of the license plates of cars when they illegally pass buses, and these pictures are then sent electronically to a vendor for pre-screening. The vendor then sends the pictures of the offending vehicles to the Sheriff's Department for verification of the offense. Each offense must be verified by law enforcement before offenders can be charged. An offending driver is sent a court summons via first-class mail that includes a picture of their license plate as the car illegally passes the bus, much like a HOV kind of violation. The offending drivers may pay a $250 fine, or I should say a fine up to $250, and waive their appearance in the civil court, or they may contest the offense and appear in court to defend. Typically, most vendors will install the stop arm cameras on school buses without upfront cost to the school division in exchange for a predetermined percentage of the fine. A local ordinance, which is why we're here tonight advocating for that, is required to authorize a school division to operate a video monitoring system on school buses. A solicitation from the division purchasing department is needed to select an appropriate vendor, and there are several out there in Virginia, and to determine installation and revenue sharing details. A strong continued collaborative effort between the school division and the Sheriff's Department is essential to instituting and maintaining enforcement efforts. We're fortunate that in Spotsylvania we have that kind of relationship with the Sheriff's Department and school division. A memorandum of understanding may be initiated between the school division and the Sheriff's Department to cover the deputies' man-hours spent verifying driver offenses. And that's about the essence of what we're advocating for tonight.
Mr. Skinner?
Sir, just want to clarify. Now, these cameras are going to be on the arm that comes out in front of the bus, or the stop sign that comes out on the side?
They're actually on the arms that deploy.
And every
on the
one of our
bus.
buses have arms in the front?
Every one of our buses has arms on the front.
Okay.
Now, I will say this, as we install them, they will have to be done in phases. So in other words, we won't be able to install 315 or 20 daily buses, at one time. And we'll have to work out how we're going to sequence that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ross?
So my understanding is that in order for a ticket to be issued, a school bus has to be unloading or loading of children. Is that correct?
Correct.
In Virginia law?
Yes, the stop arm has to be fully swung out.
So I do have one resident from Spotsylvania County inform me that they've seen, and I'm sure this doesn't happen a lot, probably hardly at all, but a school bus actually using its stop lights to change lanes because of a short distance to change lanes without picking up students. How would the cameras be able to, and again, I hope that's a rare case. I'm sure it's illegal to do that. But if that were the case to happen, how can we be assured that, Can we tell if children are being loaded or unloaded by what we're proposing goes on the school buses? I guess that's the biggest question.
You mean, can you see that from the camera?
Well, yeah, I'm sure you can't see it from the camera, but is there going to be multiple cameras? I mean, since that's part of the part of the state law, that in order for a violation to take effect, there actually has to be loading or unloading of children. We just discussed that. How can we be assured that if a ticket is issued, there was actually a loading or unloading of children that took place at the time?
Well, there are actually two cameras, one on
Okay.
the front end of the stop arm as it comes out and one on the rear, so that it catches the driver as he's coming through. The stop arms, themselves are not able to be deployed unless the red lights are flashing on the bus.
Sure, but what I'm saying is I have somebody that has seen in Spotsylvania County a school bus not be using his stop arm to pick up children, but in order to change lanes with a short amount of distance to change lanes. Again, I say it didn't, I hope it doesn't happen at all, but I have somebody that said they've seen it happen. So again, the question is, based off the camera system you're putting on, how can we be assured, can we also tell if children are actually, is there another camera that would show children actually getting on the bus or off?
Yes, there are 3 cameras
Okay.
inside every bus, and one of them actually is aimed towards the door as the door is open, so you can actually see them ascend the
So those
steps.
cameras are on right now, correct? Or-
Correct. They run on the whole
So
length
wo-
of the bus route.
So would the cameras on now sync up to these arms, the cameras on the outside of the bus we're proposing as far as a time sync?
I'm not sure. That's a good question. If they're synced with the stop arm cameras.
Mr. Ross, there's other instances where the buses deploy their stop arms when they come to a railroad track.
Sure.
By law, they have to
Right.
stop and open the door, and those stop arms are deployed as well.
And I hope it'd be against the law to run by that bus then.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep, right.
I'm going to try to review that code section to
Okay.
see if it specifically says that it's unloading and loading of
Okay.
children, because the stop arm on a school bus is essentially a
Stop
mobile
sign.
stop sign.
Sure.
So I'll get that answer for you.
Okay. The other question I have is for opposing direction traffic. I understand that if there's a median, the opposing direction traffic is not required to stop, but if there's no median, they are.
That is correct. It has to be a permanent fixture median.
So especially on Route 1 in certain areas, there's many places where there's a median and then a no median. Will the cameras be able to identify whether there's a median or not, especially? Because we would be issuing to opposing traffic too, correct? That would run by the bus.
Correct.
So would the camera system we're proposing also be able to identify if there's a median or not?
What I have seen when we took a site visit down to Prince George, Virginia, this is about 4 years ago, you saw only the immediate lane next to the bus. In other words, if you had 4 lanes and you did not have a fixed median in the lane, like, for example, some of the areas you're citing on Route 1, I don't believe that the camera would shoot far enough across to see the cars coming in the opposite direction.
Okay.
They would see the cars that come immediately, next to the bus in the same direction.
Well, when you're negotiating with a company, it'd be good to get the people that are running the school bus on the opposite direction too. I mean, but I guess what you're saying is the cameras wouldn't be able to see opposing traffic that would be violating the law by running if there's no median.
I think if there's, I'd have to check on that, but
Okay.
when I actually looked at the footage that I saw, and again, that was about 4 years ago.
Okay.
I don't
Sure.
believe it would extend to what you're talking about. I understand what you're saying, the 4-lane traffic, would you see the
Right.
traffic going in the opposite direction? And I don't know, but I don't believe that they will go that far.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Okay. Yeah, a couple questions for you. So today we're potentially approving the ordinance that allows the school system to go and implement the plan. Is that?
Right.
Are you going to come back with the plan? I mean, as far as what is the plan? Once we, I know you've got to go source a vendor and, lay out the, whatever your build plan is going to be for the buses over several months or whatever it's going to be, what the fines are going to be, how the money's going to be distributed. Are you coming back to the board at a later date to discuss all those issues?
We might come back if you ask us to for a report, but I don't think we're coming back to you for further permission. so to speak. I think we would work that out with the sheriff's department as far as revenue sharing, if you want to call it that. It's not really revenue, but
So I guess whose program is it? Is it the sheriff's program? Or is it the school's program?
Schools program,
It's the school's program.
but we're the enforcer of it.
correct.
And then, so I guess the question is, if it's approved tonight, that you'll come back, at least give us a courtesy brief about what the plan is going to look like, because I think a lot of constituents are going to want to know potentially what the fines are going to be, or what's the impact, or where's the funds going to go? You know, are they going to pay for the SROs? Are they going to pay for, you know, security in the schools, or how are we going to use the funds from these fines? So I think that's good information to bring back to the board,
We'll
and explain
certainly
how the
be
system's going to work.
happy to come back, give you a progress report. I would say up front, I doubt seriously if there's going to be a whole lot of revenue generated, because a good deal of the fines that are accumulated or collected are probably going to go to the vendor itself to recoup the cost that they have invested in installing the cameras initially.
So I guess I was understanding it was like a 40-60 share, something to that, or you're
So-
going to
somewhere
negotiate
in
that?
there. You have to negotiate that by individually, and I think I cited Virginia Beach when we were here on August 13th, that I believe that they were somewhere around the 50%
Right, so that
percentage.
So are they going to front load their fees? Are they going to take the money up front to pay off their equipment, or are you're going to start receiving a 50% share, or whatever you negotiate from
Well,
the beginning?
that I think depends on the vendor that you're working with, and that has to be negotiated out.
All right, and last question, what's your timeline?
Well, we'd like to get started as soon as we can, at least for the first, initial group of buses that we would want to.
Well, I guess
But
you're
I
putting
think it's probably, in all reality, it would be at least springtime before.
Okay, so you're going to put an RFP out, and then we're going to go
Correct.
find multiple vendors?
Right.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Mr. Marshall?
I just wanted to address, Mr. Ross brought up about US Route 1. And Mr. Upco, I'm asking this as a question, but I think I already know the answer. We don't have any school buses currently letting children cross Route 1 anyway. We go up and
Correct.
go up and turn around and come back.
Everything is
everything's-
door side.
Yes.
And we actually do that everywhere, not just on Route 1.
Okay.
It's sometimes parents get aggravated because the bus will drive by their house and then they'll have to loop around and come back, and they don't understand that we're trying to make sure, even on a rural route.
Yeah, it's just safety first for the children. That's-
Absolutely.
I'll just make this statement with the revenue that could be generated from this. This whole program is not revenue-based by any means.
Correct.
It's to stop folks and get people to pay attention, to stop driving by these buses.
That's correct.
I've had constituents complain about it, happening in Spotsylvania County. A lot of it's these right here, telephones, people messing around on their phones, not paying attention, going by a bus stop. And we got to set a precedent, start finding people for this, and get them to stop before they run over a child. So I appreciate y'all doing all this.
Thanks.
Mr. Yakubowski?
Thank you. Yes, I don't look at it as a revenue generator. Whatever is generated will probably be decreasing as people figure it out. So I would rather not base spending on a revenue that is potentially and hopefully will be decreasing because people will get the message. The other thing too is I would prefer not to tell people where the cameras take pictures of, so they know that they could speed in this lane and not that lane. We could probably not discuss that publicly. Just let them know when you see a school bus stop. And you might get a picture, you might not. Might be a bluff, but you know what? They need to learn not to speed and not to pass. I found it interesting, just the information that you had provided, that the buses that did the survey, it was all in the springtime. And I'm just curious, I know you don't have any data, but
Well, that was a window that, we had a very short window determined by the Virginia Department of Education. They'd say you have to do this in starting whatever the date was till
Right.
the ending date, and it was always in the spring.
Well, I just wonder why, especially at the beginning of school, people aren't used to it. And does that number decrease? Does it, go back up when springtime is here? Just nothing really pertinent to the ordinance, except more of just seeing how people drive. Just two things that I would ask that you guys take a look at, which I'm sure you already have or will be, is in the contract, the maintenance of the cameras, just to make sure if they start breaking that they do replace them in a timely manner, that we're not on the hook for that or for any removal cost like they used to do with Dish And DirecTV, you'd have to take the
Right.
satellite down yourself and send it back. So that kind of thing, and then also the length of the contract. And there was talk in here of red light cameras. So as we go along, if there can be communication with our county admin, just to see if they're open, not to delay this whatsoever, but if we can piggyback on it at a later time, that the company might be able to do red light cameras also in the future.
Yeah, I know in Virginia Beach that the same vendor does both.
Okay. That would be great. And like I said, I don't want this to delay it whatsoever, but if we have the opportunity to do red light cameras and work with the same vendor, you know, all the better. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board? If not, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone signed up?
No, sir.
Is there anyone who did not sign up who wishes to speak to this issue?
Good evening. I'm Mary Coleman from Berkeley District. Two other are drivers.
Angela Staley. And Raymond Lockett.
Please, we want to thank you for bringing this so far. We have come a long way with this, and we need this desperately. I can tell you from personal experience, having to take someone to court, going to the magistrate's office to get that warrant against a lady that had done this to me, and taking her to court is stressful. There's no backing. I went alone. I went with the parent of the child. This is going to make it so much easier for us. And daily, today alone, in a subdivision of mine, 2 people passed my lights. No regard for my children. We do this. We go over the radio and we call in. We've got a license plate. Please write this down. Come in the office afterwards. This is going to stop all of this. This is going to push forward what we need most to keep your children safe.
I just have a comment in reference to you wanting to determine about the median. The vendor will see it first and determine that if there's a median there or not, and if it's a chargeable thing to send to the sheriff's office.
Okay.
Also like you all to know, the way things are currently handled, the driver, in addition to trying to make sure the children getting off the bus safely, if a car was to pass them while they have their stop sign out, we've got to be able to identify that driver. Plus, we've got to be able to get that license plate before we can even proceed to do anything. This would eliminate all that. Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who did not sign up who wishes to speak to this issue? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Yakubowski?
I saw a lot of hands go up. I'd like to make the motion to approve the ordinance. If anybody wants a second and third it, that's quite all right. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Now we can vote.
Seven yes, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, that brings us to the next public hearing. It's R 18-0011 Spotsylvania Courthouse Village 2 LLC, the Village at Courthouse Commons, and this is in the Berkeley District. And we have Ms. Fennell and Mr. Hughes from the Planning Department.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. May I have the floor, computer, please? This is a request to rezone. This is a request to rezone approximately 3.99 acres from agricultural 2, A2 to mixed-use 3, MU3 with proffers for residential development consistent with the surrounding MU3 zone parcels. The parcel for residential development consists of both single-family attached and detached and may include any other residential use types permitted in the MU3 district, except apartments. Other residential use types permitted within the MU3 zoning district are townhouse buildings, I'm sorry. Recommendation: on August the 7th, 2019, the Planning Commission voted 6-0 to recommend approval with proffers dated December 19, 2018, and last revised on July 19, 2019. The subject parcel is shown here outlined in red and is zoned agricultural 2, A2, and is surrounded on 3 sides by the Village at Courthouse Commons subdivision, zoned mixed use 3, MU3, in July of 2013. Its 4th property line is shared with Plantation Wood subdivision, zoned R2, in January of 2016. Rezoning of this 3.99 acres will make the zoning of this parcel consistent with the surrounding zoning of the Village at Courthouse Commons. During the planning phases of the Village at Courthouse Commons, the developer sought to obtain this approximately 3.99 acre parcel to consolidate with the surrounding 145 acre parcel to be rezoned to MU3. During the R13-0004 rezoning, the property was held by a number of errors, and the developer needed additional time to acquire this tract of land. On August the 20th, 2018, the title to the subject property was transferred and conveyed to the applicant by a special commissioner's deed. The subject property is located within the primary development boundary and identified as mixed use on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. As shown, the subject parcel is wooded and undeveloped. At present, there is no means of access to the subject parcel. The parcel is located approximately 500 feet east of the terminus of Courthouse Commons Boulevard, private, and its intersection with Rosecrans Lane, private. The applicant will create an access to the subject parcel by means of a private ingress-egress easement across the applicant's other property in order to connect to the public right-of-way, identified as Courthouse Commons Boulevard. This parcel, once rezoned, will be consolidated with the surrounding parcel and developed as a future section of the Village of Courthouse Commons. On the screen is the applicant's generalized development plan. The subject parcel is shown in red. Development of the subject parcel will be a continuation of the development occurring in the Village of Courthouse Commons and consistent with the present construction of the subdivision. The addition of the subject parcel into this overall development will provide for ease in maintaining the consistency of the types of residential units included. Integration of the parcel into the overall plan for development will allow for a consistent layout. The parcel will be developed in conformance with the mixed-use 3 MU3 zoning district, and the future transportation network will provide private road access, which will be determined and evaluated through the site plan review process. The land use: the Village at Courthouse Commons proposal is within the area designated for mixed-use development. A mixed-use land use designation consists of providing for a variety of land uses and a compact walkable community with a denser development pattern. The subject parcel of this application is currently A2 and is not consistent with the future intent of the comprehensive plan. The requested zoning declassification, MU3, is consistent with future intent of the comprehensive plan and the zoning of the adjacent parcels. Considering the land use patterns, zoning, and location, the comprehensive plan would be supportive of mixed-use development type in this location. Transportation: according to the proposed general development plan, the project transportation network will provide private ingress-egress across the applicant's other property to connect to the public right-of-way identified as Courthouse Commons Boulevard. The projected number of daily trips generated is undetermined at this time and will be addressed during the site plan process. Public facilities: the public schools, all school-aged children residing in the subdivision attends Robert E. Lee Elementary School, Spotsylvania Middle School, and Cortland High School. The addition of the approximately 3.99 acre subject parcel is not intended to increase the total unit count, but rather to create a more accommodating layout and mix of unit types. Therefore, the requested rezoning of the subject parcel and any build-out will not place additional burden on the schools beyond what is currently anticipated by the development of Courthouse Commons subdivision. Fire rescue emergency services: the subject parcel is located less than 1/2 mile from Spotsylvania County Fire and Rescue Station 1 In regards to solid waste collection and disposal, at the time of the site development, a description of the methods of solid waste and recycling, storage, collection, and disposal will be provided in the form of a solid waste and recycling statement. Water and sewer facilities exist within Courthouse Commons subdivision and shall be available by extension to the subject parcel. Library facilities, the subject parcel is located approximately 1.5 miles from the Central Rappahannock Regional Library's Snow Branch. Parks and recreation facilities, the current development of Courthouse Commons subdivision has incorporated a swimming pool, meeting facility, playground area, open space, and interconnected walking areas to address the recreational needs of the community. These amenities will be available to the residents of the entire Courthouse Commons development. Historic resources. There are no known natural, historic, and cultural resources associated with the project area. Therefore, no negative impacts are anticipated. Natural resources. There is no identified resource protection area associated with the subject parcel. The subject parcels does contain a small area of wetlands which surrounds an intermediate stream. The applicant's design for development of the subject parcels will be in compliance with the county and state requirements for stormwater management and will be verified at the time of site development. There are no findings inconsistent with the comprehensive plan. In regards to the proffer analysis, the applicant has provided a proffer statement dated December 19, 2018, last revised July the 19th, 2019 for the Board of Supervisors consideration. Staff evaluated the proffers according to the parameters established in the Code of Virginia, consistency with comprehensive plan, levels of service, and identified projects within the county's FY 2019, FY 2023 capital improvements plan. General development, the applicant commits to develop the property in conformance with MU ordinance requirements. Number two, the applicant commits the development shall include single-family detached houses and single-family attached houses and may also include additional residential unit types as permitted in the MU3 zoning district except for apartments. Architectural. The applicant commits the units constructed on the property will maintain certain architectural treatments in regards to the building exterior, foundation, roof, windows, and doors. Utilities. The applicant commits that the property will not be served by a pump station. Staff is supportive of the language of each proffer as proposed. Each proffer is considered an on-site proffer that addresses the impacts within the boundaries of the property to be developed and ensures that this infill project resembles the surrounding development. Findings in favor of the proposed development is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The requested mixed-use MU3 will ensure that the subject parcel is consistent with the comprehensive plan and the zoning of the surrounding MU3 zone parcels. This will allow the continuation of the Courthouse Commons development, and the additional 3.99 acres of MU3 zone land will not have significant impacts on public facilities. Findings against, there were no findings against. Recommendation based on the proposal's consistency with the comprehensive plan and the fact that if the subject parcel had been available when the surrounding parcels were zoned mixed-use 3, MU3, it would have been included in the original Spotsylvania Courthouse Village rezoning case. The Planning Commission and staff recommends approval of R18-001 with proffers to rezone the approximately 3.99 acre parcel from agricultural 2, A2 to mixed-use 3, MU3. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, the applicant is also in the audience.
Before we continue with the hearing, I'm told by my experts up here that our young scout has earned his merit badge, and we don't want to keep him up too late. Are there any comments on this issue from the board? All right, we'll open up the public hearing. Is anyone signed up?
No, sir.
Does anyone who did not sign up wish to speak to this issue?
Mr. Chair, I'm assuming the applicant waived his time. Is that right, Billy? Okay.
Seeing no one coming up to speak, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Mr. Marshall. If there's no discussion, we can vote.
And Mr. Marshall, that is with the proffers. Thank you.
7 yes, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, that brings us back to the presentations report by staff. The next item on the agenda is the vote, the SUP 18-0011. It's AT&T at Peace United Methodist. This is in the Cortland District. And we have Mr. Dameron and Mr. Hughes.
Mr. Ross?
Okay. So first I
Mr.
have a
Ross, I just wanted the disclosure.
disclosure statement to read. I hereby disclose I have an interest in special use permit application 18-0011 AT&T at Peace United Methodist Church as a stockholder of AT&T Incorporated. My disclosure is on file with the clerk and is available to the public for review. Ed, Amy, please record this disclosure in the minutes of this meeting as required by law. Okay. Oh, thank you.
Oh, you wrote it.
I did. Okay. Do you have any questions? Okay, for planning staff, I've got a couple questions to ask. So one of the primary concerns of the community I'm hearing is the effect this tower would have on their property values. Your report to the board indicates a finding that it will have no effect on property values. Did you study the effect of this tower will have on the value of the surrounding properties?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. What information have you provided to the board at this point to support your conclusion that there is no negative effect on the value of surrounding properties?
None.
All right, thanks. Can I assume correctly that this was also the case for the Planning Commission, that you reported no negative effect but did not study the effect of the surrounding properties and provided no information?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Thank you. How many members of the public spoke against this application at the Planning Commission?
4.
Okay, thank you. Other than the applicant, how many members of the public spoke in support of the application before the Planning Commission?
None, sir.
Okay, thank you. So you and Wanda have received at least 3 phone calls in opposition to this tower, correct?
That's correct.
How many calls have you received in support?
None.
Okay, thank you. So I've just got to, thank you very much. And I don't know if
Yes,
anybody
sir.
has any other questions for planning? Okay, so I have a couple statements to make. I have received at least 12 phone calls in opposition to the tower and at least 11 emails in opposition to the tower, and I think it's actually greater than 11. It's what staff pulled using FOIA rules and some keywords. And I have heard from at least 2 other board members who have received at least 1 email against the application. I have received 10 emails and 2 letters of support in support of the application, and I think I have received only 1 call in support. I just couldn't remember. I am aware of at least 1 opinion letter from a local firm which details the negative effects of these towers have on neighboring properties. Christian P. Kahala and Associates back in 2015 provided an opinion letter which cited several studies and resources informing an opinion that towers have a negative effect on property values, especially the properties which are closer to the tower. And the surrounding neighborhoods here come right up against the tower. While the study was done with respect to properties which are not at issue here, the conclusions are still applicable to this tower. Carl, would you hand that study out to the other members of the board? So the board also has received petitions against the application totaling at least 136 signatures, with at least 101 of those being unique and local. I do note that the board received petitions in support of the tower containing 104 signatures, 68 which are unique and local. Well, we have, okay, for the copies for the public, if you care, they're up here. While we have received comments and communications related to the environmental effects of radio waves which are emitted from the facilities which will be located on the tower, the board cannot, by law, consider such factors, and I move that the board, my fellow board members, disregard these in any consideration of this matter. I also want to note that while I appreciate the applicant providing propagation maps to the board, despite the fact that they were not requested, the board cannot, by law, consider these and the information they represent in disapproving an application. And I move that the board disregard them in the denial of this matter. So, Mr. Chair, does anybody else have any questions, comments? Yeah. So I move that the board deny applications SUP 18-0011 for the proposed tower at Peace United Methodist by adopting the denial resolution provided by staff. And Carl, I'd ask you to read that at this time.
I'm going to go ahead and hand this out. There will be copies for the public because this is obviously the first time the board is receiving these, so I'm going to make these available for the members of the public. All right, Supervisor Ross, as you recall, the board directed staff to prepare this denial resolution. I'm going to read through it for the record as it was just provided to the board and the public. Whereas AT&T Telecom requests a special use permit approval for a 105-foot monopole communication tower with a 4-foot lightning rod for a total of 109 feet on 2 parcels together constituting 8.829 acres zoned residential R1. The properties are located on Maple Grove, Route 1115 at the intersection with Blake Drive, Route 1116. One property is addressed as 801 Maple Grove Drive, and the second unaddressed and identified as tax parcel 23A92D. The parcels are located in the primary development boundary. Properties are designated as institutional development on the future land use map of the comprehensive plan. Tax parcels 23A92B and 23A92D, Portland Voting District. And whereas planning staff has reviewed the subject application and recommends approval with conditions as stated in the staff report and the executive summary. Whereas the Spotsylvania County Planning Commission has held a public hearing on July 17, 2019, duly advertised in the local paper for a period of 2 weeks, and interested citizens were given an opportunity to be heard. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Planning Commission recommended approval of this subject application with conditions with a vote of 7-0. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors held a public hearing on August 13, 2019, duly advertised in a local paper for a period of 2 weeks, and interested citizens were given an opportunity to be heard. And whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors continued its consideration of the subject application to its meeting on September 10, 2019, and whereas the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors considered the application for special use permit SUP 18-0011 and makes the following findings. That the application does not sufficiently satisfy the following standards of review set out in Section 23-457 of the Spotsylvania County Code. 1, Section 23-457A2, that the proposed use or development of the land will be in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the area or neighborhood in which it is located. The development of the proposed 105-foot tower with 4-foot lightning rod at the proposed location is not in harmony with the scale, bulk, coverage, density, and character of the surrounding areas and neighborhoods, which are comprised primarily of dense, residential, single-family homes established in the 1970s and 1980s. Proximity of the tower to the neighboring homes is immediate at less than 300 feet and extends outward to the limits of its visibility. At the proposed location, many residents will walk out their front door to an immediate and substantial view of this tower. This tower in itself will have a negative visual impact upon the neighborhoods. Single-family homeowners will be negatively impacted by the sight of the tower and the use and enjoyment of their homes. The neighborhoods are already impacted by traffic created by the encroachment of neighboring commercial properties, but have thus far at least been protected from an encroaching widespread visual impact like that of the tower. This tower will create an encroaching visual impact. While the monopine design is an attempt to reduce the visual impact on residents, and the board commends the applicant in its attempt, the board finds that the design looks artificial on its own and is made to look even more so due to the location. It will stand out due to the height of the tower, which extends beyond the surrounding tree line, which in turn reinforces its artificial nature and visual impact, and does not mitigate the negative aesthetic impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. The proposed tower is out of place at this location, does not fit in with the character of the residential neighborhood, and will have a negative aesthetic impact on the neighborhood, the residents, and their enjoyment of their property. 2, Section 23-457A3, that the proposed use will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of adjacent land and buildings or impair the value thereof. The development of the proposed 105-foot tower with 4-foot lightning rod at the proposed location will hinder or discourage the development and use of adjacent land and buildings and impair the value thereof. The development of the proposed tower at the proposed location will discourage reinvestment and redevelopment of adjacent land and buildings and negatively impact their value. The board finds that the County Department of Planning staff performed no study of the impact of the proposed tower and the value of the surrounding properties or their appropriate development before finding that the proposed tower does not impair the value of the surrounding properties or impact of development. Planning staff position on this finding is not supported by information provided to the board. There's no information before the board that indicates that the value of the single-family homes will not be negatively impacted and that there will be no negative impact on further reinvestment and redevelopment of the residential uses. However, regarding this application, the board has been made aware of information provided to the county in the past, which indicates that towers such as the proposed tower will negatively impact the value and marketability of surrounding residential properties. The board was provided an opinion letter dated September 4, 2015, by Christian P. Kayla and Associates LLC, related to the impact the communications tower has on surrounding properties that references studies and other information. Although prepared for properties that are not at issue here, the conclusions of that opinion are applicable to this tower and the surrounding properties affected by this application. The conclusion being that the towers negatively impact the value of surrounding properties, especially those that are closer to the tower. At the public hearing before the Planning Commission and before the board, neighboring property owners also testified to the negative impacts the proposed tower will have on the value of their property by affecting its marketability. Before the board, residents referred to studies in support of their conclusions. This effect on marketability would negatively impact values and would disincentivize owners from investing in their properties for fear they will not be able to realize the true value of the investment in their property. That there is significant opposition to the proposed tower at the proposed location. During the public hearing on this application before the Planning Commission, 4 people spoke in opposition to the tower. During the public hearing on this application before the board, 6 people spoke in opposition to the tower. Opposition is further provided through petitions containing 136 total signatures indicating their opposition to the application for the proposed tower. 101 of those signatures are unique and local. The board notes that support for the application for the proposed tower is provided through petitions containing 104 total signatures indicating their support of the application for the proposed tower. 68 of those signatures are unique and local. Before the Planning Commission and the board, there were no speakers in favor of the proposed tower other than the applicant itself. The speakers in opposition raised valid concerns related to the application for the proposed tower, which the board considered, including the negative aesthetic impact on their properties and their enjoyment thereof, and the negative impact to their property values. Opposition was further provided to the county through emails and phone calls. Planning staff and members of the board received at least 15 phone calls and 14 emails in opposition to the tower. Planning staff and members of the board received at least 20 emails and 2 letters in support of the proposed tower. County staff received no phone calls in support of the proposed tower, and 1 member of the board received 1 call in support of the proposed tower. That the members of the public have, through various means, raised concerns regarding the environmental effects of radio waves emitted from the facilities located at the proposed tower, on the proposed tower. The board hereby affirmatively disregards those concerns. That the applicant provided propagation maps to the board despite the fact that the county staff and board did not request them. The board affirmatively disregards those maps and the information they represent in considering its denial herein. That in balancing the information and opinions before the board, both for and against the application pursuant to applicable law and under sound zoning principles, the factors weigh in favor of denial. Whereas general welfare and good zoning practice are served by denial of the special use application, now therefore be it resolved that the Spotsylvania County Board of Supervisors does hereby deny SUP 18-0011 and in doing so incorporates the findings, actions, and information set forth above and further directs the county administrator to transmit written notice of this action and all other information to the applicant which is required by law. Thank you.
Any comment or questions from the board? If not, we can vote. The public hearing was closed at the last meeting. We would have to have advertised to reopen the hearing.
Seven yes, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, that brings us to new business. The next Board of Supervisors meeting is September 24th, 2019 at 6 p.m.
Motion to adjourn from Mr. Skinner. We can vote.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
7 yes, motion passes.